Coming up on Theatre Talk. For the first act, I disliked you incredibly. Do you see why I dislike your character?
Absolutely, he's appalling.
Theatre Talk is made possible in part by the CUNY TV Foundation.
I do like it. Yes, that's not something I'd ever deny, but it wasn't until I got out of your limousines, till I left that warm bubble of money and good taste in which you exist.
Thank you.
That I remembered that most people live in a way which is altogether different.
Well, of course.
And you have no right to look down on that life.
You're right.
Thank you.
Of course, that's right. However, in one thing, you're different. I do have to say, Kira, in one thing, you're different from everyone else in this part of town.
How is that?
You're the only person who's fought so hard to get into it when everyone else is desperate to get out.
From New York City, this is Theatre Talk. I'm Susan Haskins.
And I'm Michael Riedel of the New York Post. Now, you know, Susan, one of my favorite contemporary plays is David Hare's Skylight, which has been given a beautiful, beautiful revival by director Stephen Daldry on Broadway now, and it features two of the finest performances, I think, of the season. Both of our guests have been nominated for Tony Awards. Please welcome to Theatre Talk, Carey Mulligan, welcome, and Bill Nighy, who was on here, you just reminded me, is it possible 9 years ago for the Vertical Hour?
Yep.
Oh, my God.
I know.
You still look exactly the same.
You do.
Handsome as ever. Welcome to Theatre Talk, and congratulations on the performances.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So for people who haven't seen the play, if you could, Carey, just give us a sense of who your character is and where she is at this particular point in her life when the play begins.
I play a character called Ciara Hollis, and she's a school teacher in a tough school in London. She sort of rejected her past in a way and is living a pretty monastic lifestyle in a not very nice place in Kensal Rise.
And then into that not very nice place, into this monastic lifestyle, comes her former lover, you. To what end? What are you seeking?
Well, he's waited 3 years to ring the doorbell. He seeks to get her back. And he's called Tom Sargent, and he's what you call a self-made man. Mm-hmm. And he's been very, very fortunate, and he's become very rich and powerful. And his character and his way of conducting himself they haven't quite survived that phenomenon. So he comes around and tries to apply to his personal relations with Ciara the same kind of tactics and energy that he's applied successfully to the rest of his life.
He's been able to succeed at everything else he's done, and except for keeping her.
Yeah, you could say that.
What I love about this play is that it strikes me as two people who the love was real that they had, and it has continued, but she has a better sense that it can't be anymore. Yeah. That she is the person who has left and moved on. Is that a fair assessment of her point of view of this relationship?
I think that's the journey of the play for my character, at least, is really realising, accepting that there isn't a possibility for it to be, for them to come together again. But that takes the whole play, really, for her to figure that out.
For the first act, I disliked you incredibly. Do you see why I dislike your character?
Absolutely, he's appalling. And I mean, in rehearsals, I used to say there were certain points where he's at his most appalling, where I used to say to Carey, call a cab.
Yes.
Taxi.
Now's the time to call a cab. We don't need the second act, just call a cab. Because his character, as I say, has not survived what's happened to him. And he says some really, truly, appallingly crass things.
But also he's done things when they first met that were terrible. Well, in my judgmental way.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Well...
But then in that respect, they both have, I suppose.
They both have.
Yeah, it takes two to have an affair, Susan.
But you were a child.
That's true. I can hide behind
Why
that.
doesn't you...
What's your excuse?
Why doesn't she call a cab? Or why doesn't she get rid of him?
A lot of it's familiar, I think. A lot of the stuff that he says, despite it being... And I think she's trying to figure out, she has missed out on the last 3 years, and this family was her family, and this information that she's getting about how this character, about Alice, his wife, how she died, she doesn't have any of this information, and this woman meant so much to her. I think she's curious. She needs to have all of that information as well.
Earlier this season, we had David Hare and Stephen Daldry on, and they were kind of fun to have together. I'm just curious, from the actor's perspective, what the dynamic is with Stephen and David in the room. Who's in charge of this production?
Stephen.
He is.
Yeah, and David's very conscientious about that. David trusts him implicitly, it seems to me.
Yeah.
They've worked together a lot, and they know each other very well. And Stephen has also directed David.
Right,
He
when
delivered
an actor,
his monologue.
Right. Via De La Rosa, I think.
Via De La Rosa. So that's a pretty intense experience to share. And my sense was that he deferred and enjoyed and was very, very comfortable deferring to Stephen at all times, unless there was something he was needed for in terms of the writing. And as we changed very little, we changed a few things, but not very much. That wasn't a great deal.
It's always been Stephen, the director, and David, the writer, but also the nicest feeling to have. I always love it when David watches the show. I always feel very kind of, I don't know, he's such an amazing man and such an amazing writer.
Is this the first time the two of you have worked together?
Yeah.
When you have this thing that the critics have commented on, the chemistry between the two of you, do you feel it sort of right off the bat when you do the first table read, or is it something you have to work at?
Well, I don't know. The rehearsals were very pleasant, weren't they? I mean, you know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
they were hard work, obviously, like always, but we seemed to, you know, to ease into one another quite.
Yeah, and it also is
Naturally.
very straightforward with Stephen. Like,
Yeah.
by the afternoon of the first day of rehearsal, we were on our feet doing the play. There was no sitting around the table discussing our characters, figuring out our, you know.
We ran the play on the second day.
Really?
Yeah. Which is radical and wonderful.
Yeah.
And there was no, I didn't get to speak about scenes from my early life, or
Did he have you off
which
book?
was a great relief.
No.
We weren't off book.
You were off book.
Well, I was secretly off book. But, well, not that secretly. But yeah, no, we ran it the second day with just bumbling around, you know, because obviously we didn't know the geography or anything.
Right.
But so that he can then see it as a whole, and that's how he directs, and which is much, much more my thing, really. I rejoice at that kind of approach. Right.
So you want to plunge in right away without a lot of analytical stuff about the
Well,
background
it's
and
a
the
practical thing. You have to, you know, you have to work out the geography. You have to do stuff.
Yeah.
Particularly in this play, and particularly for Carey, you know, she's got to chop garlic and chilies and, you know, on certain words
Yes,
and
that's
lines, and
remarkable.
open cupboards and refrigerators, and do an extraordinary thing of cooking an actual spaghetti bolognese live on stage whilst delivering one of the largest and most significant roles in contemporary drama. You know, it's like, I mean, you need that, like you need a gun.
Now, why is her role significant?
Well, I think this play is one of the greatest plays. I think it's one of the greatest plays in the English language, and I think it's certainly one of the greatest plays written in my lifetime. And I think it's a play that will be performed 200 years from now.
For those who haven't seen it, can you say more about why?
I mean, rather than me explain
Yeah.
something which takes a play to explain,
Yes.
I'll just say that it's a fabulous, unrepeatable night out. It's a proper entertainment. It's, for once, something that is perfectly integrated, where the information that's available is perfectly integrated into a love story, which is, and everything has equal weight, and it's a great entertainment. And it also does a very rare thing, which is it unlocks something in the audience and universalizes everything. And almost most importantly, by the end of the evening, it fills you with hope, and you leave the theatre like you did when you were a kid watching a cinema thing, you know, where you sword fence all the way home, or you shoot gangsters behind trees. I mean, I did, all right? I mean, I don't know if but when I saw it with Michael Gambon, and Leah Williams and Daniel Betts, the original production, I was bowled over by it. It was, you know, it was the first time really that I'd ever been in a theatre where I absolutely got it. It wasn't something that seemed to exclude me. It wasn't confined by theatrical conventions which I didn't identify with. It was contemporary, it was truly modern, and it was about things I understood, and it really did fill me. I did sort of sword fence all the way home. I wrote to Michael Gambon. I've never written to anybody, you know, and to Leah Williams, and I called David and congratulated him on his play Skylark.
Do you have anything to add to that?
I don't think I can top that. I want to put that on a billboard and just chuck it outside the theatre.
Well, no, I mean it. I mean, it's true. And I think, therefore, you know, rather than, I mean, you know, if you can't get a ticket, read it.
Yes.
It's a great play.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, well, I saw it. Did you see the production with Michael Gambon? And
No.
Yeah, because I saw it, too, in New York.
You were 5.
But you know what I like about David, and what I like particularly about this play is David reminds me a lot of my favorite playwright, after David Hare, of course, George Bernard Shaw, who has the ability to take on social and political issues, but dramatize them through human beings. And in this play, David does what Shaw does so well. He takes the person who probably does not have David's point of view about capitalism, the entrepreneur person, and makes the villain, if you will, into a very compelling human character. And if I may compliment you, I actually rooted for you and could see why this man was still in love with you. And to me, it's a heartbreaking play. And I cried the first time I saw it, and the people around me, and myself included, cried this time that I saw it too. So, while I have you two fine actors here, I'd like to get a little sense of your backgrounds. Can you tell me, Carey, sort of the moment growing up where you saw something on stage, maybe you did something on stage where you thought, this is what I want to do with my life?
Yeah, it's funny, actually, because it's all come back round again in a weird way. But I came to New York when I was 14 with my mum, and we saw a bunch of Broadway shows, and I saw Cabaret with Alan Cumming at Studio 54. And that was sort of when I decided I wanted to be an actor. And I'd been doing plays at school since I was 6 years old, and and musical theatre, actually, particularly, was what I really loved. And so I'd always done it, and I'd done drama clubs and everything I could do, bar anything professional, because my parents were sensible. And and then I just came, we came out to New York, and I suppose until that age you don't really, or at least I didn't think of it as being a job in a way. Acting isn't a job when you're little. It's just something it's fun. And then I think I just thought, no, this is what I want to do as a job. I want to be in New York, and I want to do a play, and I want to have a fire escape outside my window and light bulbs around my mirror, and I want to, live in a garret and have no money, and all of that.
Unless I get carried away with that aspect of it.
Fantasy of being an actress.
And Bill, were you...
There wasn't really any moment. I didn't think of acting as a job either. I didn't know that it could be a job. It was obviously a lot longer ago, when certainly in England, I didn't know any actors, and I'd never met an actor, and I'd never thought of it as a way of making a living. I did a few plays at school, and when I left school, because I flunked school, which is important to know, because I didn't have any qualifications whatsoever to do anything particularly. I didn't burn to act, and there wasn't any moment where I...
And as a kid, you weren't going to see plays, or...
I never went to the theatre at all.
Really?
No, the first time I went to the theatre, nobody went to the... You know what I mean? It wasn't like that around our way anyway. There weren't any theatres, and you didn't go. The first time I was taken to the theatre, I met a girl, the first girl who'd ever paid any attention to me, and I completely overreacted. I got fired after about a month, so it didn't last very long. But in that month, she wrote a letter to the drama school. She was going to drama school. She said, you could be an actor. She could have said astronaut. I'd have given it a shot. And it was, I was so sort of enthralled to her. I thought we were to be together for the rest of our lives. And I had names for the children. It was that sad. And she quite rightly got rid of me. But in the meantime, she'd sort of put me on this path, and I went to the drama. And she took me to the theatre, and we saw the all-male version of As You Like It, which completely confused me, because I'd been to an all-male school, and I thought that therefore men in the theatre played women, like they did at school.
At school.
So when I auditioned for drama school, I did what I thought were one woman and one man. I did Eliza Doolittle from Pygmalion. I thought I'll give him a range. And for my man, I did Cesario from Twelfth Night, which, as we know, is a woman dressed as a man. So
funny.
I completely blew it.
But you got in.
Well, they said come back with more suitable material.
So I guess you did, because here you are in a David Hare play.
Here I am, yeah.
Hey, I wanted to ask you, speaking of beat and rehearsal, you did the Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
Yeah.
Is that interesting? Because you must have to do all this green screen.
There's no green screen.
Oh, what are they doing to you that you have tentacles on your head?
They didn't do anything to me while I was acting.
Yeah.
I just acted like everybody else. I just looked really stupid because I was wearing, computer pajamas. It's hard because you have to act your way out of the pajamas. And you have to kind of pretend to be really scary when you're obviously looking really and everybody has to keep a straight face. And they ran out of jokes after about a fortnight. I mean, people literally used to not look me in the eye as I was walking around the set because I looked so lame. And they'd just say hi and walk away because it was too sad. This middle-aged man with I had a skull cap with a bobble on the top. I mean, it was just really, really...
Well, you got to make a living somehow in this racket.
I kept saying my fee over and over again in my mind because they gave me quite a lot of money, and I was like, just say the fee.
I'm curious at your approaches to acting because, Bill, you said you like to get up, play on the feet, and not a lot of the background stuff. Is that your way as well, or were you more of a drama school girl who likes to talk about what the...
No, I didn't go to drama school.
Oh, you didn't?
No. I did my first play when I was 19 at the Royal Court in London. I didn't know what I was doing at all, and it was a really dark play, actually. It was a Kevin Elliott play, and I played a narcoleptic rape victim.
Whoa.
And I went from my first job, which was Pride and Prejudice, which was a film where
Right.
I got to run around in fields and be happy, into this incredibly dark play at the Royal Court, and felt completely out of my depth and didn't know what I was doing. And then did another play at the Almeida a couple of years later where I was equally lost. And it was when I did The Seagull for the first time with Ian Rickson that I kind of figured out how to do things. And I loved the approach on this of getting up on her feet. I spend a fair amount of time in my head and outside of it thinking about backstory because I need that. I grew up in a lovely, very nice life. Nothing bad has ever happened to me, touch wood. You know, I don't have any drama. There's no darkness to draw from particularly, and I have to use my imagination a fair deal because I seem to have a habit of taking on quite kind of tortured souls in some respects. So it's been a lot of kind of backstory. Or images of people, and you know, I have a photo in my dressing room of who I imagine Alice is, who's the wife of this character.
His wife, yeah.
You know, all of that kind of stuff. But it's not something I need to have conversations with people about. It's just what I do for myself.
Do you need backstory?
Well, not really, no. I guess I do, yeah, I guess I do. I think about those things. I mean, I suppose I do. I'm not really sure, honestly, to be honest with you. I don't know what I do. I mean, I'm lucky that, you know, the stuff I work on, mostly, everything you need is in the script.
Yeah.
Well, Spencer Tracy said, learn your lines and don't bump into the furniture.
Well, yeah, I've heard that one. It's not quite like that.
Not right.
But you know, you need to know what you need to know, and if there's something that informs the way you speak or the way you say the line, you might need to know something. You know, but I don't sort of study in that regard. But I'm aware. I'd like to be aware of the story. You know, what's happening and what may have happened that might inform.
And I mentioned you came to our notice in America when you were in the movie Love Actually, where you played the dissipated rock star. How did you prep for that?
Well, apart from 25 years of reading the New Musical Express and Melody Maker and watching it, I mean, there was a period. You're supposed to stop reading the music papers when you're about, I don't know, 45. I continued till I was about 58. But you know, I mean, I did know every bass player and every drummer and every band in the whole, you know. So I did some study in that regard because rhythm and blues music, to broadly speaking, is, you know, my great enthusiasm. But I didn't, in terms of the acting, I don't know. I just tried to make it funny.
I first saw you in a wonderful play called Blue Orange. That was a play about the guy who thought he was Idi Amin's son.
Correct.
And you know what I always admired about him, and I'm curious to know what it's like to be on stage with him, is you have a kind of balletic grace about you, just the way you move on the stage, and the way I don't see actors in non-musical plays move that way. And I know it's a part of this character, you know, he's restless, he's entrepreneurial, but do you find that balletic grace an interesting part of his personality? And
yeah, it was, I mean, that started kind of emerging in rehearsals, and I was holding a script in my hand trying to chop onions, and I could see, you know, this sort of movement around and the way that he was interacting. And what's so great about it in our play is that it's in my space that he's doing this, that he has this sort of, he's at the same time as sort of exploring the entire room and doing it with such grace. He's also basically pissing everywhere. Can I say that? You know, like it's such a... It's territorial move.
Oh, that's very...
But especially when he gets amped up about things. There's a point now in the play, in Act 2, where he literally hops in the air and like clears the floor by half of...
Is this something you've been adding to the performance, Bill?
It just happened.
But there is that great moment, though, which brought down the house the night I was there, where you imitate very briefly his movement. Was that your idea?
Yeah, I think so. I don't remember. I mean, everything's usually Stephen's idea, so it's probably his idea. But, you know, yeah, it sort of evolved in London and then got more and more ridiculous here. And but, yeah, a lot of the time on stage I spend watching the way that he's treating my apartment and my territory, and it's a really interesting dynamic.
The play is Skylight, a beautiful play by David Hare, terrific performances by Carey Mulligan and Bill Nighy, and it is at, what theatre are you at?
John Golden.
The John Golden. Don't miss it. Thanks a lot for swinging by and talking to us on Theatre Talk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You could never accept the nature of business. I mean, finally, that's why you had to leave.
Well, I must say.
I mean...
I never knew that was the reason.
All right, I'm sorry.
I never knew that was why I had to leave.
I put it badly.
Badly? You did. I thought I left because your wife discovered I'd been sleeping with you for over 6 years.
I mean, well, yes, that as well. That played a part.
Andrew for Theatre Talk.
About to meet the nominees for the 2015 Tony Awards.
What's the best part about the nomination?
I think that our whole crowd, our whole gang, everyone got nominated in our production, which was amazing. So me and Bill and Matthew and our director and our designers, and you know, so it felt like everyone got to celebrate together.
What is the best part about being nominated for a Tony?
Getting drunk on a JetBlue flight back from Los Angeles to New York. I was in LA. I finished a movie yesterday, and that I had been filming for the past few weeks, and 5 a.m. or whatever, I got all the phone calls, and then I had a couple hours, and I got on the plane, and there was a steady stream of champagne. So I'm working on a hangover of the ages.
We heard that you're under the weather, and you're answering all questions. You have bronchitis. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Congratulations on the nomination. What's the best part about being nominated for a Tony? You got it. This is brilliant. When you heard about the nomination, when you heard about the nomination, who was the first person you spoke to? Because of the bronchitis? So you haven't told anyone yet with your own voice. When you do get your voice back, who will be the first person you shout out? What's the best part about getting nominated?
Oh, getting to talk to you.
Well, what's the worst part?
Oh, my gosh. There's no downside. Are you kidding? I mean, it's a little tough that we do this on a Wednesday because those of us whose shows are still running, now I have to go do a student matinee and then an evening show. So I'm like, wah, wah. Last time when I was nominated, my show had closed. So, I left this thing and was just like champagne for everyone. And now I have to just stay sober and do 2 shows.
When you found out about the nomination, who was the first person you spoke to about it?
Oh, well, I kind of texted with people, but I called my sister. And she has 3 kids in Dallas that are all like high school and junior high, so she's just always running people around. And she didn't answer her phone. And finally, I was like texting her, I am nominated for a Tony. Answer the phone.
Oh, my goodness. The best part is that you can wake up in the morning and feel around for the nomination pin and go, okay, yes, they like me. They really like me. Quoting.
What's the worst thing about getting nominated?
There's no worst thing. Well, yes, there is. Yes, there is. There is a worst thing because I wish we had 300 nominations because it's such a group effort. Judy has a barn and we all put on a show and all your just nearest and dearest are working with you. So it's really rather horrible having to separate out.
What's the best thing about being nominated for a Tony?
You no longer need sleep. You just your head hits the pillow and you stay up for 3 weeks because
Yeah, I was doing that for the week before. I was just, I haven't slept in about 8 days. So this is all a dream right now. I'm not sure what I'm saying.
Exactly. You have the face of a lizard. Like, really.
We're not gonna wake you up from this dream. But what's the worst part about being nominated?
I think it's the exact same thing. It's the sheer terror of fancy. No, it's just great. It's like there's actually there's no bad part other than you're like, oh, I can't up the next couple things I do because fancy.
Yeah, I'm feeling the pressure not to up.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say whatever Rob says. He's the playwright. I'm the actor. I just say whatever he tells me to do.
Sort of like a hand puppet.
Exactly.
Thematic. I love it. I'm singing now. Also, I'll audition for any musical.
That's what happens.
Yeah,
you get nominated for a Tony and your life becomes a musical.
Yeah, that's absolutely it.
Who was the first person you spoke to after you heard about the nomination?
Well, we have a friend, Jeff Beal, and he just sent me a text that said, "Yeah!" Yeah, right? You got the same one,
I did.
Right?
It was like instantaneous.
And what was great was there was like an implied bro at the end that never was there. It was just like,
yeah!
Our thanks to the Friends of Theater Talk for their significant contribution to this production. Theater Talk is made possible in part by the Frederick Lowe Foundation, the Corey and Bob Donnelly Charitable Fund, the Noel Coward Foundation, Carrie J. Fries, the Dorothy Strelson Foundation, plus public funds from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs and the New York State Council on the Arts, a state agency.
We welcome your questions or comments for Theater Talk. Thank you and good night.